Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another in our series, National Extension College series of webinars. And I'm so pleased to welcome two guests today, and from an organisation that we have worked with in the past, and other webinars are available on our YouTube channel, so do subscribe to our YouTube channel. But I'm delighted to welcome Grania and Claire from the Classical Association. Hello.
Hiya.
Hello, great to see you. I'll just have a few slides myself to run through, and I'm sure people are joining. And if you are joining, please say hello. Please, it's lovely for Grania, myself and Claire to know we're not talking into a void. It's nice to know that there are people there. So please say hello if you can, just write in the chat. Hopefully you'll be able to see the chat at the side. And there's opportunity to ask questions probably at the end of the session. But if you have any questions that come to mind throughout, please type them there. And if they're appropriate, we'll answer them at that point, or we'll just save them there, and then we'll be able to share them and answer them at the end. So I'll just run through a couple of slides initially, just so that you've got a feel for who the National Extension College is. So we're going to be hearing today from Claire, her experience of studying A-level classical civilization with NEC. So that's lovely to have a student with us. We don't often get to see our students, Claire, so it's so nice you could join us.
I haven't been called a student for a long time, Esther, so it's a privilege. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And really nice to be able, as I said, we're online distance learning, so we often don't see our students in that way. So lovely that you could join us, Claire. And also Grania from the Classical Association, who'll be just answering some questions regarding what careers are like and what schools should be studying. And that's going to be a contentious one. I think we may have some teachers with us, and be really good to hear around the benefits of studying classical civilization and the classics, and how that can enhance the knowledge and skills that students have within a school environment. Lovely that you could join us, Holly. Thank you very much for saying hello. So as I've mentioned, the National Extension College, or NEC, is an online distance learning college. And we've been in operation for 60 years. So we are in our 60th birthday. And one of the reasons that we were set up was to ensure that people had access to education, whatever their context and whatever their learning style. So we do have a lot of part-time students. So these are students who may be at home base, they may be working, and they're looking for flexible learning that can work around their needs. And we also have full-time students. These are students who may have stepped out of formal education and looking for an education that fits within their context, and that could be they have a disability or an additional learning challenge, and NEC is there to meet that. We also work with a wide range of schools and local authorities, and we have a number of schools who take our A-level classical civilization, mainly because potentially it could be an additional subject that they're looking to put forward. They may be trialling it with a small cohort of students, or it may be something they want to have in their curriculum offer, but don't have access to a subject expert. So that's where NEC often comes in. So from an online perspective, we are distance learning online, really catchy title that we have. But what that means is you're at a distance, which sounds quite a negative term, but you have a tutor who's there within the portal, within our learning management system, who can support you through your studies. But you're self-learning, self-studying, and at your own pace. So if you like to study at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can do that. You can log on, access your material, look at where you've got up to, and complete your assignments. And then you submit those to your tutor, who provides really in-depth feedback, which helps you to move through to being prepared for your assessment, whether that's an exam or another form of assessment. We're really proud of our material, the National Extension College, because we develop it ourselves. So we have a lovely faculty of subject experts who are teachers, and most are examiners as well. So have a real understanding of the subject and a real understanding of how to develop the learning through the courses. And that's scaffolding the knowledge, building up your skill set, and moving you towards that final assessment. So ignore the Q&A. We're not going to do Q&A now. We're going to move to Grania's slides. So Grania, I'll give you a few seconds to upload those, and I'll stop sharing mine now. So Grania, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm not sure how you're going to work this with Claire. So I think you've talked through what you're going to be doing. So I'll leave you to have your slides ready and introduce yourselves, if that's okay.
Lovely. Thanks, Esther. Right, I'm going to attempt to share my PowerPoint now. Let's see if this works. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Not yet, but it'll come in a minute, I'm sure. It'll be whirring in the background. Where are you joining us from today in the world, Grania?
I'm in Glasgow.
Ah.
Yeah, and it is it's raining, as you'd expect it to, up here in Scotland.
Okay. Well, I just managed to get my washing in from outside before the rain started. No slides yet, so hopefully Amanda can help with that, who's in the background looking after us. Claire, where are you joining us from today?
So I'm in South Norfolk, where it is also raining. So
yes, I have often go to Wells next to the sea.
Oh yeah.
A nice beach drive, which is lovely. So it's a nice little trip up to it. So I think if you could just hover over the thumbnail of your slides and add them to the stream, that's okay, Grania. So if you present, click present. If not, we'll just pause, and if you can just email them to me, and I can then share them for you.
Oh, I can do it.
Have you got them, Claire?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I think I might have them as well. I have actually, so I can do it. So hold on a second, and I will.
I'll let you do it.
Yeah, because you're going to be part of this, so we need to make sure you're free to present. Okay, just make sure I choose the right ones. Hopefully these look familiar to you. And hopefully Amanda's going to put them into the live session. Does that look right?
They are the slides, yes.
Hey, good. Okay. I'm not sure why they're in that. There you go. Perfect. We're on. Okay. So you'll just have to do that lovely thing where you say next slide, please. But we'll.
So does that mean if I'm clicking through the slides, you can't see those?
Oh, no, we can. You're in control. That's perfect.
Lovely. Perfect. Good. We got that. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be joining you today. Before I get started on the case for classics in schools, I'll briefly explain who I am and what the Classical Association is. So my name's Grania. I'm the education coordinator for the Classical Association. And in a previous life, I was a classics teacher at a secondary school in London. The CA is one of the UK's largest classics charities, and we're the subject association for the discipline in the UK. We're a national organisation with local and international links, which promotes and advocates for classics and ancient history and seeks to provide professional development as well as community opportunities. The CA is also a learned society, so we support academics as well as educators and students, and we seek to make the classical world engaging and accessible to the general public. I'm very fortunate to be joined this afternoon by Claire Woosley, who is the Regional Lead Practitioner for English at Ormiston Academies Trust. And last year, Claire was awarded one of the CA's bursaries to study classical civilization with the NEC. So we're here today to present the case for classics in schools and what the benefits of offering classics are to your students. Claire will then also share her reflections on how she has managed to study with the NEC whilst also teaching and parenting full-time. So to get started, as I'm sure you're aware, classics typically refers to the study of the ancient Mediterranean world. Traditionally, this has centred on the civilizations of Greece and Rome, but more recently, the study of classics has widened to reflect the diverse nature of these ancient civilizations, recognising that they encompass lands and peoples from the Near East right the way through to the British Isles. And with the diversifying of our discipline comes the opportunities for us as students and as teachers to explore all manner of topics. Ancient languages, although this doesn't just mean Latin and Greek, literature, history, politics, art, architecture, philosophy, society, culture, and religion. As classicists and ancient historians, we're unique in that we have access into how the ancients thought and learnt and behaved and lived in every sphere of their lives. As Peter Jones, classicist and author, pointed out, the ancient world grappled with exactly the same issues that we do, as he lists them here: life, death, God, sex, love, family, children, education, the nature of the world, our origins and development, and so on. And so it's through classics that we are able to study the human experience of the ancient world. And it's the recognition and understanding of the cultural differences between the ancient and modern worlds that shape our own human experiences in the way that we analyse the world around us. So with such a breadth of topics to explore, we as students and teachers of the ancient world acquire a broad range of skills too. Classics is a discipline, and so you become armed with a wide range of coveted skills, just a selection of which I've mentioned here. Classics provides your students with the skills that are much sought after in a wide range of degree programmes and occupations, and really make them stand out in the crowd. If we were to sort of look beyond GCSE and A-level and think about a student's educational journey, Classics and Ancient History opens the door to a variety of degree programmes for your students. Traditionally, studying classics at university meant studying Greek and Latin, but that just isn't the case anymore. There are so many different classical degrees on offer, and you can pair Classics and Ancient History with any sort of subject, some of which I've listed here: drama, philosophy, English, modern languages, Oriental studies, for example. And this is just a snapshot. So you can imagine how many other iterations of degree programmes are out there. And to be clear, your students don't need to have studied Greek and Latin in school to get onto these courses, and nor do they have to study them at all. Many universities are now offering courses based on the ancient world that will look at ancient source material in translation, or, as you can see here, are paired with other subjects where those ancient language requirements, well, there aren't any ancient language requirements at all. But studying classics and ancient history at school doesn't mean that it's only classical degrees or, you know, a classical career path that is on offer to your students. Studying classics at school can obviously set you up for any number of humanities degrees. You know, it is such a good foundational discipline that encompasses a broad range of subject areas. But the skills that are required within classics are useful to whichever field of study your students go on to choose. And they're hugely valued in STEM degrees too, and STEM jobs. I think often these two subject areas are sort of pitted against one another, but actually classics really complements the sciences. And that is because, of course, the origins of so many of these subjects can be traced all the way back to the Greeks. And the close source analysis that comes as part of classics and ancient history qualifications really trains your students to become analytical and critical thinkers. I should say I'd sort of pause and sort of mention also those universities that offer courses in things like computer science, games development, esports, animation, for example, which are all not only hugely popular degree programs, but are also very, very popular and sought out jobs too. These sorts of degree programs, they welcome applications from students of all backgrounds. And that's because what so many universities and colleges are looking for now are dynamic individuals with transferable skills. These sorts of degrees don't have GCSE or A-level equivalents. And so what course leaders for these new, very exciting courses are seeking are the students who can demonstrate that they are curious, that they can think outside the box and can problem solve whatever challenges are put their way. And if anything, classicists and ancient historians are well placed to enter this arena of technology, STEM. Not only as human beings are we on a daily basis absorbed in literature, art, music, watching other nations interact with one another, but we have also studied and understood how the ancients did this too. And it's this knowledge of these human experiences, both ancient and modern, that is so vital in the construction of AI and virtual realities. Although, we are living through a remarkable era with science and technology very rapidly merging human life with machines, we're now beginning to see conversations from leaders in this field heed caution over how we use AI before we no longer have control over it. And as students of the ancient world, the long lens through which we look deep into the past helps us better understand cause and action and consequence, perhaps more than any other subject, which means that our students can contribute to these conversations just as much as those with straight STEM backgrounds, and our students' perspectives are just as valid. And it's these skills that are gained in the classical classroom that they don't just apply to university or college courses, they apply to the workplace as well. Classics feeds into the ever-changing landscape of Europe. We are living in a very fast-paced world with the rise of technology automating out skills that were previously learnt. But these skills that are learnt through arts and humanities qualifications will never become redundant, and in fact are becoming ever more sought after. There are few post-18 courses now that I think are sort of directly applicable to so many of the new and exciting job opportunities that are out there. And so increasingly, employers are seeking graduates who are flexible, creative, open-minded, articulate. And these skills that are gained from sort of studying the 5th century BCE, for example, are totally indispensable in the 21st century. Classics and ancient history graduates or students of the classical world, whichever level they study it to, are critical thinkers, they're excellent communicators, they are adaptable, they are curious, and they all possess skills which employers are actively seeking out in their employees. As citizens, classics sort of provides us with this deep understanding of factors that shape society and provides us with a very well-formed awareness of the viewpoints of others, and an appreciation for a very diverse range of cultural identities. And these are the skills that are fundamental to the successful running of a forward-thinking and harmonious workplace. So I realise I've sort of very briefly sort of banged the drum there for classics, and I think why I think it is so well placed within a school curriculum. I hope that what I've demonstrated is that offering classics and ancient history in school at whichever level, it could be something that is extracurricular at Key Stage 3, it could be a qualification that you are offering at Key Stage 4 or at Key Stage 5. But I think giving your students access to the classical world not only helps diversify and broaden your curriculum, but I think more importantly, equips your students with the skills that will make them the dynamic individuals that are much sought after at both post-18 education and in the wider world. So I'm going to hand over to Claire now, and she will share her reflections of how she has built classics within her school's network, and also share her reflections on how she has managed classical civilization alongside studying classical civilization alongside all of her other job roles, including being a parent.
Yeah, all of my other things that I do. I was just going to see if I can so shall I see if I can present then, and that will hopefully all work.
I have my fingers crossed, Claire.
So I might need to just quickly go through Ronya's screens. Is that, I think if I click on this.
Present, hopefully it will then.
Add to stream, hang on. I don't know if that has helped. Hang on. I can see them, Amanda, but I don't know if anyone else can.
You're not seeing them yet, no, unfortunately.
No. Okay, yes, I can do that. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Hey.
Can I tab them? I don't think I can tab them, I'm sorry.
Grania, are these yours that are sharing? Can you see if you can tab them?
We've got the same PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So
let me see if I can do it here. Does that change it?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, okay. So I can't hear you, but
we can see and hear you, Claire. So
yeah, so we'll go with that. And if anything happens, just shout. So thank you for the opportunity to come here today. I mean, I think probably thank you on a number of levels to both Grania as the representative of Classical Association and you, Esther, as the NEC, because it's been quite a brilliant opportunity for me, really, to study the classics as a teacher, as an English teacher. I will put my cards on the table straight away. I'm an English teacher, English graduate, medievalist, which is a weird element, which is possibly making me more interested in the classics. But part of the reason I wanted to talk about opportunity, and the image that I've got here is an image of a Greek concept of kairos. And kairos is I suppose, to put it in the most prosaic way, is the god of opportunity, or is the representation of opportunity. And you can see here that he's winged and that he has a forelock, and the idea being that you have to grasp that opportunity when it comes to it. And I felt that grasping opportunity and thinking about opportunities, both for you as a practitioner and a teacher, but also for your students, was a kind of useful starting place for us. So broadly and I'm conscious that I'll reiterate a fair amount of what Grania was saying here, but it's worth thinking about why the classics. I've been teaching for a very long time now, and over that time I've seen that there's been a kind of shift, a cultural shift, and a better recognition of the importance of canonical and foundational texts in what we teach in high schools and even primary schools. A shift that I broadly support, although it is scary to start with. And I think that taking that notion of opportunity, it is an opportunity for us to kind of go right back to the beginnings of so many of our subjects. And in fact, I've put humanities, but listening to everything that you were saying, Grania, of course, it's sciences as well, because so many of our words in science come from Greek and Latin roots, and it's such an important part of how our scientific knowledge and scientific culture have developed. So it's a real bedrock. I also think that there's this beautiful, interesting combination in classical subjects and ancient history of both the familiar and the unfamiliar. So I'll use an example from the Odyssey, which is one of the first texts that you'll study if you are fortunate enough to grasp that opportunity of the A-level, in that when Odysseus shows off to the Cyclops and reveals who he is, that's very familiar, that notion of arrogance, that notion of, I can't not say that this was me. And that is something that you really identify with on a human level, that and the kind of sense of his deep grief and longing for his family from whom he separated for so long. But at the same time, it's deeply unfamiliar. The gods, the monsters, even the cultural references that are embedded in both the Odyssey and the Aeneid and in the other cultural texts that you study, in Oedipus and then into the religious texts, are really unfamiliar. And I've started doing a little bit of work around Greek religion. It's just getting your head around a completely different way of understanding God. It's fascinating and enriching and frustrating sometimes, but I'm enjoying the challenge of it. I think it's also worth saying what amazing stories there are in classical literature. So, you know, you get all the good stuff, all the stuff that makes multi-billion selling series of books, magic, monsters. You've got heroes, and not straightforward heroes, difficult heroes. Odysseus is brave, yes, he's incredibly witty, absolutely, but he's also, you know, he's not straightforward. He spends a lot of time with people, with women, goddesses who are not his wife, and so he's a complicated character. We have to think about how much we admire him. This is a quote that I've found in my studies that I find really useful. It's the hard basic facts of the human condition, because you're stripping it back to stories about people and those relatable human reactions. I've touched on this idea of linguistic roots, but I do find it really fascinating. Alex Quigley, for those of you who are English teachers or interested in literacy, may know him. He, in one of his books, talks really passionately about the importance of opening up those Greek and Latin roots to all of our students, that it shouldn't be something that's only for a certain set, that's only for a certain school, that's only for a certain section of society. This is something that is and should be for everyone. It's the origins of so much of our society, of the words that we use every day. The previous Prime Minister referenced a classical text in his resignation speech. That should be something that's open to all of us. And so part of why I'm so passionate about it is because I do really believe, and I work for a trust called Ormiston, or OAT, third biggest trust in the country by pupil number, and we are really passionate about social justice and ending disadvantage. And I really feel that the study of classics and ancient history is a very important part of that, that we take it stops being this kind of rarefied subject, and we bring it right into our classrooms, all the way from our primary schools up to our sixth forms. So that's my kind of broad reasons. But why is it useful for me as an English teacher? Well, for a start, it's given me some really interesting new perspectives on old familiars, on things that I thought, oh, I know this, I've been teaching this for however many decades, there's nothing new in this for me. And then it turns out, of course, that the more you peel it back, the more there is to know about them. I really liked Gronya's analogy of the long lens, and I think that's a useful one for us as teachers, whatever our subject is that classics gives you more in your toolbox. It gives you another filter, another lens to look through, another way of seeing things that's really exciting and really lets you make all of these new connections. So it's been unlocking references that I've known all my academic life, but that I had never really truly understood. So understanding Chaucer and Shakespeare, now that I know classical texts, so A Midsummer Night's Dream, that kind of old standard in every English classroom and cupboard, now understanding that through the lens of Pyramus and Thisbe. Okay. Understanding Lady Macbeth through the lens of Medea and Clytemnestra really changes how you see her. So she goes from being a really norm-breaking, terrifying, she's nothing like a woman in the 16th century would be, except she's just like women in Greek tragedy. In fact, she's not even as bad as they are. Okay, so no spoilers, but it's really helped me to understand all of these different kinds of references. Duffy, of course, with her excellent and interesting work on The World's Wife, where you get these fantastic poems from the perspective of female characters from Greek myth, which I'll come to. I think it's also this notion that classical civilization, like we've touched on, is so vast and it's so diverse. It's far more diverse than the Western canon, in my feeling. We've included more ancient texts in our Year 7 English curriculum, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, which comes from what is now, I guess, kind of modern day Iran, Iraq. That's the oldest existing form of literature that we have. And it's a great story. Year 7 love it. It's a really interesting story. And it broadens their horizons and gets them to think about the world in contradictory and complex ways, which, of course, is what we're aiming for. I've talked about it being familiar but strange, but I also wanted to touch on feminist retellings, because I think there's a misconception, a misunderstanding that the classics are of the old times, of the before times, that it's dead, white, male, stale, all of those things that we hear. But actually, there's been a massive resurgence, which I would hope that lots of you are aware of. Natalie Haynes, Pat Barker, Margaret Atwood, you know, really kind of heavyweight writers and thinkers are reclaiming these stories and turning them into something very different. They are finding these women's voices and giving real kind of strength and power to them, to the point where people are putting them on T-shirts that I've seen. So Medusa is becoming the face of our unspoken rage. What a great thing to talk about with students. So all the way through, you can see how that could then be really helpful for sixth form students to be grappling with, and inspiring, one would hope, as well. So that's me and my personal feelings about it. How is this helping my schools? So my role as a regional lead is to support and advise and guide 7 different schools. We've got 43 in the trust, but I work primarily with 7 in the east of the country. So how is it helpful for them? And then, of course, I have influence from a trust-wide perspective. So firstly, it's helping us create really broad and ambitious curricula. I was talking to a young and enthusiastic head of department today, and not one of our schools actually, but encouraging her to look at classical texts to enrich her curriculum in English. We've been adding ancient texts to modern units. So we've added Oedipus Tyrannos to our tragedy unit. So students study Oedipus, and then they study Othello, and then they study A View from the Bridge, and then they study Things Fall Apart. So they're seeing that long lens again, that long history of an art form. But we're also adding more modern texts to some old familiars. So we've got Duffy's poem about Medusa. We've got extracts from Natalie Haynes. We've got the opening chapter from Margaret Atwood's Penelopiad. So kind of really building on things that are familiar, but adding more, kind of enriching them. And they've been very well received by teachers and students. We are creating enrichment opportunities. So we're using ideas about rhetoric and putting those into some of our public speaking and debating competitions, which is where we get to oracy. We also have enrichment opportunities in that one of our schools that I'm closely associated with, we're really trying to get together a trip to Rome. Fingers crossed we can make it work in 24. It's about the logistics of it, really. So those kinds of broadening of students' experience. And it doesn't have to be those flashy things, you know, it can be as simple as putting on a Greek tragedy, talking about Roman history, putting on and reading some exciting speeches from the time of philosophy. It's a great offer for oracy. It's about expanding the subject offer in Key Stage 4 and beyond. And this kind of comes back to what I was saying already. It is a seat at the table and a voice in the debate. So that rather than being there are so many doors that are shut off for our students. There are so many forums in which they are not allowed, and they find it hard to break into those rooms and into those conversations. I feel really strongly that our purpose is to help them do that, is to push those doors open, to give them the words, the vocabulary, the cultural knowledge, the confidence to have that seat at the table and have something to say. So I think it's worth saying at this point, we're not teaching them these things in an uncritical, slavish way. We're not saying this is the pinnacle. We're saying this is really interesting. And how do we feel about the presentation of women in this? Hang on a minute. How would Penelope feel? How does Clytemnestra feel when we look at the play Agamemnon by Aeschylus? So there's lots of different ways that we're kind of bringing those things together. And again, that long lens and that those different ways of looking. So I've only been doing it for just less than a year, about 9 months, I think, when I added it up in my head. We've made some progress. So we've put The Odyssey by Simon Armitage. If you don't know it, I highly, highly recommend it. He wrote a radio play for Radio 4. If you know Simon Armitage as poet laureate, if you know his work at all, it's very normal and natural and earthy. That persists. A little bit of a health warning in terms of there's a tiny little bit of swearing, so just be aware of that if you were thinking of teaching it. We've put Agamemnon by Aeschylus, another play, in Year 9. It's really about Clytemnestra. I slightly don't like the fact that the play's called Agamemnon because Clytemnestra is so much more interesting, very popular with students. We've put, as I said, Oedipus Tyrannos in Year 9. And we've got a brief excerpt from one of Aristophanes' comedies in Year 8. So that's kind of direct stuff we've put in. What's coming up next is I want to work with more schools in the Trust to extend the offer of classics at GCSE. I think we're moving out of a time when the GCSE offer was very narrow, and now it's about offering a broader range and more interesting things. We're looking at a classics enrichment offer through Oracy, so that's the debate thing I was talking about. And I'd like to particularly work with our 6 primary schools about their ancient cultures units, which they do. It's part of the national curriculum. Almost every primary school, I think all of them have an ancient cultures unit. So it's about how we support them, how I support them, and enhance that with them. And then broadly encouraging all kinds of teachers. I was at our science conference recently, selling the importance of STEM words, STEM like root words. So knowing that photo comes from the Greek word for light, knowing that chrono comes from the Greek word for time, that stuff in science, but also in maths, so that some of those difficult maths words become much easier to understand. So lots of exciting things, but of course, how do I do it? So I have the benefit of not having a full-time teaching timetable, although I have about the same as an assistant principal. But I do also, I'm a leader in the Trust, so there's a lot. And I'm also a parent. I have a teenager, and I think we call them these days, and a middle schooler, so busy social lives. So my advice to you in thinking about it is planning. You do have to plan, like everything, I think, in education. If I don't plan when I'm going to spend my time on my A-level, it doesn't happen. There's a concept that I really like, which is called habit stacking. That is where you identify a habit that has to happen. So something that's unavoidable. It might be a commute. It might be ironing in front of the television. It might be, in my case, waiting for your child while they are at an enrichment opportunity for an hour or plus in the car. So it's finding those times where you can stack something else on top of it that might otherwise be hard to do. So for me, that was very much about, I have to sit outside my daughter's choir in the car for over an hour every Saturday morning, which, you know, obviously there's lots of scrolling that can be done during that time. But I discovered that that was my time. Back to that idea of opportunity. That was my time to grasp. And I spend that time doing my classics work. I've got plenty of space. I can read. I can make annotations. I don't tend to write my essays in the car, but, you know, there's that kind of idea. I haven't put it here, but the one thing I'd also add is that I really see the time that I spend on my A-level as self-care. I try not to see it as a must or a have to, and instead try and phrase it to myself as I want to, and I do really want to. I find it so interesting, and it's great to be a student again. There's also things that you can do whilst you're doing other things, as it were. Podcasts, if you haven't yet discovered Natalie Haynes Stands Up for the Classics, it's brilliant, and it helps you feel a bit more like a classics student, and that I've got a basis of knowledge to start from. Lots of wider reading. If you like fiction, the fiction world is currently awash with retellings and reworkings of Greek myth. There's also lots of non-fiction out there. Highly recommend Mary Beard, SPQR, and I'm reading Women and Power this summer. So it's kind of immersing yourself in it, which will help you feel more part of it. Because whilst I really enjoy the self-directed and the self-paced, I also like that sense of there's a bit more to it, and I'm immersing myself in that world. The thing that I find really helpful about the distance learning is the flexibility. So I'm sure somebody probably at the NEC looks at my interaction pattern, but it will spike during the summer holidays. So I do tend to do bigger pieces of work, longer pieces of work that need my attention during the summer holidays. And then during term time, it's much more reading and shorter tasks that are easier to manage. So again, I suppose that comes back to planning, but having that all round, I really enjoy that sense of flexibility, and so I'm not always stressed or worried about deadlines, which as a teacher, you can imagine, is a bit of a constant. Okay, so I think this is the point at which I shall hand back to you, Esther, to talk about what's available, or maybe you, Grania, I'm not sure. But
yeah.
A little bit of both, but I think Grania's going to pick up first. Thank you so much, Claire. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. And I mean, you know, to hear an English teacher or an English specialist speak so passionately about the classical world is wonderful. But it was just to sort of, I suppose, close our section of today's webinar by just, you know, advertising the fact that the CA is offering 5 full bursaries for state sector teachers to study classical civilization with the NEC. Last year we offered 3, but we just, you know, we were very in demand for them, and so we have upped the number of bursaries that we are offering. There's plenty more information on the NEC website, or if people would like to, I'm very happy for people to email me directly, contact me directly, and I'd be happy to have a chat about these courses, what it might entail, and how the CA can support individuals that are working through the courses independently. There is a very short application form. I don't think, Claire, it was particularly onerous to fill out last year.
No.
And the deadline for applications is the 8th of September. But that's all from me, Esther. If there's anything else that I've forgotten or you'd like to add.
No, that's perfect, Grania. Thank you. And we will be sending out some further information to all those who've booked onto the webinar. So if you did book tickets and you booked through Eventbrite, you will be receiving an email follow up. If you're watching live through YouTube, then you can email us at info@nec.ac.uk, and you can find that on the NEC website. So it's right at the top. So wonderful. I mean, the passion and the energy that came through, that was fantastic. Thank you. I was writing little bits of notes and getting ideas for things as you were speaking. I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers were doing the same. I'll just open up briefly to those who are online now to see if there are any questions. Whilst I'll give a bit of wait time, being an ex-teacher myself, I'll just let people think, and hopefully we'll have somebody type something. I've just got a question for you, Claire, firstly. It was really compelling around the value of studying classics and bringing classics into the classroom for a wide range of different students and wide range of abilities. And you were seeing about that accessibility as a subject. I just wonder whether you faced any challenges from your school leaders or those around you around those benefits. Did you have to really push that, or you were very passionate now? I'm sure that just came through in your discussions, but I'm wondering whether any teachers might be thinking, well, how do I approach this conversation with somebody within the school?
So I think the fact that there's been quite a big investment in bursaries for teaching. So I think there's been quite a lot of money gone into Latin teaching, which obviously is slightly different.
This program is been well funded, yes.
And I think a little bit in classical civilization PGCEs as well. So that's useful. I think it's partly about that there's easy ways to do it, that you don't have to go in with like, I want to introduce a new GCSE.
Yeah.
So I think the way that we found it works best is kind of drip feeding it, or I probably shouldn't refer to it this way, but I tend to refer to the Simon Armitage play as the gateway drug, because it's so straightforward. Sorry, Poet Laureate, if you are listening. It's so accessible, and Year 7, it's the first thing we do in Year 7. They absolutely love it because it's drama, and it's good drama, but it's also got, you know, they do know these characters. That primary schools are really good at teaching Greek myth to them. So starting with something small, I haven't got Julie's kind of full details of how she did it in your previous school, Grania, but I'm going to. But starting with something small, starting with drama, starting with something accessible, and then expanding it outwards. But I also think that, you know, school leaders are aware of the need for breadth.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing this because of Ofsted, but it's not going to go badly. Let's put it that way. And then I think it's also, if really the way that I approach things, because I spend a lot of time talking to school leaders, if you present the opportunities and you talk about the solutions and what it's going to bring, that can be a really nice way to kind of get them interested. So those would be my kind of recommendations. And again, there's a vibrant and supportive community online.
Yeah.
And to reach out to them. And there's lots, the Classical Association is a really good example of that, but Classics for All as well. There's lots of people who have got ways to approach it better than I have, really, that they can advise you on. And I know there's funding for textbooks and so on. Grania, you're probably much better positioned than I am, because
Thank you, Claire. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of reiterate what Claire said there, really, that I think between the Classical Association and Classics for All, we have probably heard every argument that senior leaders in schools might put up against offering classical subjects, and we've got the counter argument to all of those. You know, we've got the stats, we can prove that we've got the resources, we've got the funding to support, we've got training. As Claire's mentioned, it adds breadth to curriculum, which is such a hot topic for schools at the moment anyway. So I think if there was any concern about potential pushback from SLT, or whoever it is, the head of department or whoever it might be, to reach out to us at the CA or to Classics for All. We are very well placed to support with those conversations, and sort of guide through schools through that process of potentially adding classics onto their curriculum at whichever key stage they're thinking about it.
That's wonderful. Thank you both. We've got a question, Holly. Thank you, and thank you for enjoying the presentation. Language. I think Grania, you picked up on that at the beginning, didn't you? And perhaps just to explore that a little bit, there may be a perception that some knowledge of us being a linguist in some way is beneficial. Is that the case, or is it something that you don't need and you can access the material and the concepts without that?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely right. Traditional view of classics is Greek and Latin and nothing else, and that just absolutely isn't the case anymore. We have, classics. You are able to study classics at every level without knowledge of Latin or Greek, and that takes you all the way through to university. There are so many university courses now that don't expect students to have had a background in classical languages, nor do they make it compulsory. And so you can spend your entire life reading the classics in translation, and still be able to access its richness and its diversity and everything else that it offers. Should you wish to study classical languages, and that doesn't just mean Greek and Latin, there are so many accessible beginners courses, both in person and online. If you were going to university, then you can I didn't pick up Latin until I went to university because my school hadn't done it before. And so the languages, if you chose to do them, are also made very accessible. And sure, it might mean that you understand the root of a particular word a little bit more than if you didn't have the languages, but not having that knowledge doesn't make classics any less interesting or fun or worthy of study.
Thank you.
I don't have a background. I don't have any Greek, and I only started learning Latin after I started the A level, so it's not a disadvantage at all. And there is a popular online free platform that has classical Latin. Should I phrase it that way? That I would recommend. I think I have enjoyed studying a little bit of Latin because I found the cognate, so where words from Latin have come into English, I would just loved that. I was like, oh
yeah.
But no, Holly, to answer your question directly, certainly I haven't felt at a disadvantage without it. I think it's something that you can add on, but it's by no means a prerequisite. And the translations now have come so far that I don't think that you would, unless you really wanted to get into the linguistics, maybe. But otherwise, that's probably beyond the remit of an A level anyway.
Yeah, my son's reading Seneca at the moment, and he's just for interest because he likes to. He has just graduated, but not with a sports degree. So that just shows he's very interested in. And he was trying to wade his way through a sort of a direct translation, and he's found out that there is one that's a little bit more accessibly written that he's going to now try and have a go at. So, and that just shows he's coming from a sports perspective, but just thinking from a sort of, you know, understanding of that thinking and those concepts that Seneca put forward. Yeah, so it is accessible for everyone, and you can find the translation or the way something's written in a way that works for you, I think, can't you? Just a comment for me, and perhaps you both thought about and put forward, I suppose, ways in. If a teacher's now thinking they've been listening to this now, or they watch it later on and think, actually, yes, I might be interested in that bursary. I've got till September the 8th. What can I do now to just sort of make me think, is this for me? Is this something that I would be able to, spend the time doing? Claire, you've talked about that very well. So you've talked about podcasts or some initial reading, perhaps going onto the Classical Association website. Any tips for the next month in their summer holiday where they might just be able to sort of think about the subject a little bit before they put in their application?
Claire, do you want to?
Well, so this person, I really highly recommend. They're so accessible. The audiobook's even better, although I did enjoy reading them as well. I actually really love his version of Oedipus. I think he does it really well. He does it real justice, and it's really accessible. I'm trying to think.
So some nice summer reading for all our teachers who are going off to the beach for their their well-earned rest.
Natalie Haynes has done, well, anything. Pandora's Jar, Children of Jocasta, Thousand Ships. I'm a little bit of a fangirl, which is a bit embarrassing. Or her most recent, Stone Blind, will give you that flavour of the ancient world.
Wonderful.
And a sense of what you can do with it now, because she brings them to life. I feel like every other week there's a new version of Medea, to be honest, which is great. Like, I'm not complaining, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think all of the current reiterations of the classical world that we're seeing in contemporary fiction are a great place to start, as are the podcast. And of course, National Theatre on Demand has got its back catalogue of all of the very, very well put together productions of all the Greek tragedies. But I actually, to be quite honest, I think in terms of a starting text, read the Odyssey. It's an adventure story. And if you're sat, on your holidays and you want to follow the questionable decisions of a questionable man like Odysseus, just read that. You'll get a laugh.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. And I'm sure this has been incredibly useful for teachers and others who are just looking to explore the subject. So it just leaves me to say thank you for all who are watching and those who watch later on. Thank you to Claire and to Grania for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really learned a lot as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.